update starting today. Sorry about that. I just had some issues with playing around with this transparency background. I may or may not keep it. It's just, I wanted to give it a try because every day I'm dodging around trying to show you something on a screen, and then the frame of the image is too big, so it covers everything. And then secondly, I don't need my background in the picture. It's not that important, but we'll see. Let me know as we go here what you think of this, if you like this or not, because if it's really not, if it's a distraction, like when you move your head, I know parts of me are going to disappear and, things like that. So if it's distracting, let me know. I'd be happy to just drop it out. But I want to see how it goes this time. And hopefully I won't have the issue that I had a couple of weeks ago where I tried this and it crashed my entire system. And I had to reboot. That really wasn't, that wasn't the best situation. But we will see. So Barry, good morning. Thank you. Hello. And I'm going to hop in to our second sip stream over on locals so I can see your icons on the feed. There we go. Sound is good. Excellent. Appreciate that. And so like I said, slightly different look today. I'm trying to take some of the background out of the image. It may or may not crash the system. If it crashes, it may take me as much as 5 minutes to come back, because when it crashed last time, it crashed everything and I had to completely reboot my computer. But I'll bring it back, and then I'll just, clip together the recording for those who watch the recording instead of the live video. So, but today I wanted to do something just a little bit different, not totally different. I mean, it's the same concept, but I'm hoping to add a little bit of, add some folks to this stream that I don't normally add, and that is folks over on LinkedIn. So I've had a number of people join recently because I started posting a few things on LinkedIn. A lot of folks over there know me from a variety of situations, different career paths that I've taken or had. So I just thought I'd pop a note over there. And, today it's just going to be a simple link. So anyone joining is just going to be looking at that link going, what the heck is this? Let's see if I can edit that post and put just a little bit more in it than that. Not letting me edit the post. Oh, well, I'm not going to fuss over it. Because those of you who are here, you're the people that I'm here to present to for the most part. And while I definitely would love to expand the audience a little bit by adding some folks from LinkedIn, those who already know will be here anyways, and I'm posting the videos afterwards over there in the afternoon. But so I've got some interesting topics to go over with you today. I did a fair amount of research today to put together something for you. And one of the first things is, I like to just throw it out there. When I first looked at this today, it was a bloodbath. It was all red, but kind of looking nice today. Things are kind of tweaking up since I first saw it, because the red was like all the way down into the corner when I first opened this up. Now, a lot of these lower, the health and technologies and, those areas are actually starting to tick up into the green, which is a nice thing to see. And then, of course, these big guys over here that are always, they always seem to be experiencing some kind of boost or increase. They're always, it's like a 50-50 every day that you're going to have a couple of reds show up, just because they go up. And then where else can they go? They're going to have even $1 down is enough to cause it to go down. So there you go. So that's our little hit of the stock heat map today. I watched the first sip the Scott Adams school today, so I watched a good chunk of that. And oh yeah, it's really cool to know that you can keep the little one intrigued by me, which I find that really funny. Although I do have to say, my my cousins, as I grew up, I have literally no joke, somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 cousins, because of the fact that I was born into a family with my mother being the oldest of 11. So she's got quite a few siblings. So she's the oldest of 11, like I said. And most of my mother's family had in the neighborhood of 5 kids. So I have something like 50 cousins, just direct cousins on my mother's side. And my father's the third of 9. And same thing on that side. They didn't have 5, they had more like 4. So, 4 times 9 is 36. So I have something like 80 or almost 90 direct cousins, first cousins. And then when you go into second cousins, it goes like exponential. It goes like over 150 almost instantly. So tons of cousins, tons of little kids that I used to babysit when I was growing up. And yeah, they thought they found me Uncle Dave. Even though I wasn't their uncle, I was Uncle Dave to so many because I was the guy who could get down on their level. As you probably know, watching me, that I could get right down on a kid's level really quick. But yeah, it's, and thank you, Kitten, for the update as well. So as I was saying, I watched the earlier stream, and, with that in mind, let's do our quick simultaneous sip. You can have more than one of these a day. That's why we call this the second sip. So just grab your cup or a mug or a glass, a tankard, chalice or stein, a canteen jug or a flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee, and I really like coffee. So join me now in the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better, the simultaneous sip. And it happens now. Go. Cheers, cheers indeed. And tea is a perfectly fine sip. I always heard that there was this concept of not my cup of tea. Until you actually start drinking tea, you don't get it. And it's the truth, because if you're a coffee drinker, you're drinking ground up bean paste, right? Grind up your beans, soak them in water, drain it out, and that's what you're drinking. And that's pretty consistent across the board. There are a few exceptions with chicory coffee. I personally love that coffee, but I don't get it very often because nobody else I know likes it. But I'm going to probably buy some again because I really like it. It's got kind of a licoricey flavor. It's interesting. So there's like only one coffee, right? It's varying degrees of strength and smoothness and kick and all of that in the caffeine department. But coffee is, there's no wonder why, if you have enough coffee, you probably are not having any problems with the lower quarters, if you know what I'm saying. It works. But when it comes to tea, there's so many things. I mean, what is tea really? It's just take a bunch of leaves that you go out and pick, dry them out, grind them up sometimes, maybe not, stick them in a pot with hot water, let all the stuff from those leaves get into the water and sift it out. And some of the teas, oh my Lord, they can be just horrific. But on the other hand, there are quite a few of them that are really good. I personally love mint teas. And I think, I'm trying to think of some of the others. I did find out that chamomile tea, I'm very allergic to. As soon as I drink it, my throat swells up. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, an acquired taste indeed. I like having variety in my everyday, but this is the one place where I don't really care if I have variety. Just maybe the different creamer flavors, because I like caramel in my coffee. Sorry, I got it close to my lips. I couldn't not do it. So anyways, on this morning's Coffee with Scott Adams School, Owen Gregorian went over a bunch of news articles, and he's prolific. I mean, he really finds so many great articles to talk about. He did a lot of the research for Scott Adams, or at least I believe he did, and I find it's great to talk about some of his items, but I don't want to be redundant if you already saw the earlier show. So I'm looking at just trying to cherry pick the ones that he writes, but not necessarily talks about on the earlier show. So he did talk about this one here today, which I'll pop out here. And, this is really just, let's see if we can make this a little more readable here for everybody. So, and yeah, we'll figure out whether or not this whole thing works, but we're going to try. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can play it like, I wish they had that on the other side. I don't know if you can't see it probably, but I've got the option to pick my way of displaying the content on the right there. And there's one option when the drop down comes in where it's got this really big, but it's only on the left side. It's like classic Microsoft, right? If you can do it on the left, why can't you do it on the right? I mean, come on. Anyways, whatever. So no, I won't go there. There's something that just occurred to me as a joke out of that, but I'm going to leave it alone. But this is interesting that 10% of all student loan borrowers are over 90 days past due, with millions defaulted in 2025. This smacks to me of the same kind of thing that people who decide to protest and think it's appropriate to attack not the protesters, but attack law enforcement, whatever flavor, because they're Nazis, right? But the minute you start calling somebody a Nazi, the people who believe that wholeheartedly or choose to use that as their excuse for the protest feel there's no barrier to violence, right? It just happens. And I'm not going to get into that today, but that's not, but we've just spent the last 2 years, well, probably more like 10 years saying your Ivy League degree or your college degree is worthless. At which point you say to yourself, I spent all this money. I now owe so much money on this and I'll never be able to repay it. So to hell with it. Why should I? Right? And it justifies not paying it off. And let me just make one thought for you. If you actually watch your, actually deal with your student loan and you want a kind of a tiny bit of a secret, this is a mortgage trick that I heard about. Now, you'll have to test this to validate that it's true, okay? Because I could be 100% wrong on this. But if you send $1 per day, if you can do an electronic transfer to pay your student loans, and you send $1 per day, it causes the compound interest to reset every single day, which basically cuts out the interest. So if you did $1 a day, and then at the end of the month you make your monthly payment, which is going to be, let's just say you have $150 a month that you're supposed to pay, and you add $30 to that by doing $1 per day as an electronic transfer, and you probably have to do this on like a bill pay in your bank account to send it. Now, again, I don't know the accuracy. I do not know for sure that this will work, but I watched somebody talk about this on mortgages, and they said this will actually effectively reduce your interest rate to near zero. Maybe not zero, but near zero. Now, if it's true, please try it if you have a student loan and tell me if it's true. I don't know. I don't have a student loan. I paid all my education in cash up front, or I did tuition reimbursement. So I don't have any student loans. But if this is true, all of these people that are going into default, they could actually pay their student loans off And, what might have been a $30,000 or $40,000 bill, which is not, it's not easy, but it's not incredibly outrageous to pay over, say, 10 or 20 years. But if you put that up against the compound interest, your 30 to 40 ends up being 100,000 or more, right? And it's ridiculous, brutally painful for anybody experiencing that. So again, I don't know if it works. I don't know if it's true, but if it is true, try it. Ask somebody you know who's buried under one of these things, have them try it. Worst thing, you're out $30 a month, right? You try it for maybe 6 months to see if it actually stopped the compound interest from jacking your payments up ridiculously, or your total amount owed ridiculously. So I don't know. I'm just hoping it's a positive hack for making these student loans survivable, because in reality, I don't think anybody out there wants to not pay their student loans. In truth, I think they just feel powerless in the face of how much it's going to be, and God knows that totally makes sense. All right, let's go to the next story here. We'll try this on this side. Oh, doggone it. Nothing you ever do with Microsoft doesn't require adjustment, and it's okay. I'm fine with that. Microsoft actually works pretty well in my book for a lot of things. Oh my goodness. It flips it on you no matter what you do. There we go. Well, okay. We'll work with it and take this one up. Yeah, go right there. Okay. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the singularity today and AI today. So this is a good one to kick off. But the perspective here is that there's the singularity as we know it, the AI singularity of general intelligence being, AGI being reached by AI, means that people's jobs are at risk and things like that. And it also means a lot of other things aside from just it being a job, right? It's something that occurs with the job. So, but there are a number of aspects of AIs that are, it's not as good as us, right? Playing poker is one of them. And I got a subtopic on poker that I'm going to talk about a little bit later as well. So how does this play out in the real world for most of us? Being bullish and looking at the optimistic, positive side of AI is one thing, but the fear of where it's going to take us, it's a concern, because we're worried about what's going to happen to all of our jobs or means of income or things like that, and we have the history of looking at the corporations as having zero interest in taking care of us, only in maximizing profit, right? So, that fear is, it is a natural outcome of worrying about AGI kicking in. So, however, there's a pretty good argument that AGI has already occurred, that it occurred in 2020, and that really we're just catching up. There's just little bits and pieces that are advancing along that path. So, but the idea is the fear-mongering perspective, and I won't say fear-mongering, but the bullet head, the header here. I look at these types of statements, so the singularity won't be gentle, as clickbait, because we don't even know what it's going to be like. We don't know if it's going to be harsh, it's going to be brutal. When I think about why we're having so many layoffs, I don't think of it as, this is not about where the world is going to be overrun because and everybody's going to be out of a job. I think of those types of headline purely as clickbait. And because we truly can't know what the singularity, because the whole perspective of the singularity is they're talking about an analogy to a black hole. And a black hole has an event horizon where if you go past that event horizon, you can't get out. And the idea is if light goes past that event horizon, it goes in and it can never come back out. And that's why we call it a black hole, because no light comes out. And we don't know what's inside of it. It could be an amazingly brilliant star that is so bright that, just whatever. I don't know. We have no idea. We don't know what's past the event horizon. And that's exactly what we're saying here. We, at this stage, the models that we have cannot predict what's going to happen after AGI. We don't know. So that said, I believe that we shouldn't get caught up into believing that everything is doom and gloom. There's a very good likelihood that it's going to be perfectly fine. Maybe not perfect, but it will be fine and will be okay. Now, I wanted to bring a little, something cool and lead into something funny. So here we have 2 years of telepathy. This is Neuralink. And Neuralink is another one of Elon's companies. And the idea here is that with a brain implant, the folks that are on the receiving end of the brain implant, they're able to actually manage and run devices. And because of that, they, paraplegics and quadriplegics, if you could just imagine what the world might have been like for Stephen Hawking, who basically couldn't do anything except use his eyes and his voice or a breath device to actually speak. He couldn't. He was totally entrapped in his brain, but his brain was totally functional right up to the end. And for the folks who have these implants, their life changes. It just literally changes their life 100%. And the optimism and the how wonderful that is. Look at the smile on this guy's face. He's paralyzed from the neck down, and he's able to play video games. Now, maybe you want to do more in life than play a video game. I believe he does. I think he's really expanding out and trying to do things that are much bigger than just playing a video game. But being able to go outside, like the gentleman in the chair that's outside there, for the first time since he had the illness kick in. I think he has ALS. This guy feeding himself instead of having to have somebody feed him. I mean, can you imagine how difficult it is to have somebody feed you? It's one thing when you're a tiny little baby and you look at the spoon and you're like, yeah, give me that bite. But if you're an adult, and it just feels humiliating if you've done it yourself for a part of your lifetime. So I think it's fantastic what they're doing, and it bodes very well and is a promising future for sure. Now, taking that to another level is this, and I'm only going to get the highlight of the article here. So the idea is Neuralink has been approved to test a robotic arm. Now, this is really, I don't need the story in this one, even though we just saw the video of the guy with the robotic arm already working. So, but I want to take this to an absurdity, a level of absurdity that is just kind of funny, because this is a television show, really absurd television show that came out back in the 90s. Yeah, I think it was mid 90s. And, it's so amazing how many things that we see that are actually predicted that are coming true right now. I mean, we're living in science fiction. But take a listen to this. It's a short little clip. I hope I don't get nailed for putting a less than a minute clip out there. I hope it doesn't demonetize me or whatever, even though I'm not making any money at this stage anyways. But this is just hilarious.
It is a concentration of approximately 14.2 quadrillion mantra drones. The combined mass of the drones is greater than the mass of the star, creating enough gravity to draw material away from the star. As the solar material passes through space, it cools, allowing the mantra drones to use it for the manufacture of more drones, which you can see leaving the oblong concentration at its opposite end.
Now, those are robotic arms coming out of the back of that device.
What percentage of the universe is now converted into mantra drones?
Above 64%. It will not take long for the universe's remaining matter to be converted.
How long?
I estimate that in 93.6 hours, this universe and all human life in it will be extinguished, including us.
There you go. I'll stop it there. So the story was hilarious, and basically there's this evil guy who's sort of exactly in the situation of one of those folks that have been paralyzed, right? Except he wasn't paralyzed. What they did is they literally took his head off of his body, but preserved it so he was alive, and then put it on this little floating thing, and he's floating around. And he needed arms. He needed something to do his brilliant crafting. Now, he was kind of like a captured scientist, like an Einstein, or not, maybe not Einstein, but one of the, I guess, who is the guy? Goddard, and well, not Goddard. That's the wrong one. Who's the guy that invented the Saturn V? That's who I'm thinking of. But these scientists that were taken out of Germany from the Nazis so that they could become scientists here in the U.S. and not be, under the gun of the Nazi regime. And we ended up putting them to work, and they created the atom bomb ultimately, right? So that's the kind of storyline this show had, where this evil scientist was being his inventions were being used by this despotic ruler, and at some point he started building these arms for himself. He had an assistant who built the first arm, and then once he built one arm, then he started crafting more and more of these arms so that he had the ability to do things, and he controlled them all. And then eventually they started putting more brain power into the arms, and the arms had only one real order, which was make more arms. And basically it just consumed everything in the universe, and just the universe was nothing but a bunch of arms floating around. So absurd and humoristic at the same humorous at the same time. So anyways, I just thought that was kind of it's a little funny, a little off the mark and everything, a little different. So now this one here, I think was a good one. I think this is also Owen. Yeah, it is. So there's a diet, interestingly enough, that leads to higher intelligence, which according to this study, leafy greens lead to higher intelligence. So if you were wondering if you should have that salad today, the answer is yes. Now, there's another thing that I learned recently, which is very interesting, and maybe it's related to why leafy greens help. Now, there's a chemical in there that they're talking about, but there's another side of it. If you chew gum while you are learning something, apparently it helps you retain what you learned. I didn't know this. I can't remember. I don't have a source to cite on this one. I just came across it and, kind of got stuck in the back of my head. So here you go. But it was really interesting to hear that story, because I thought, well, that just sounds interesting. And what I discovered, I haven't discovered anything. I've just been trying it, where basically every time I try and learn something new, I chew gum while I'm trying to learn that new thing. And I don't know if it works, but I hope so. So here's another one. And this is our moonshots. So I subscribed to Metatrends with moonshots, and I thought I'd share today's article. It's a couple days old. He doesn't write an article every single day, and that's cool. But Peter Diamandis has this, and I guess to pronounce that correctly would be Diamandis, not Tis. So he has the perspective here. This is really talking about our next chapter, right? So we already know that these AI, what do we call them? Let me go back here to yesterday, because I had a topic I was going to share yesterday that I didn't. And that is what is a frontier model. So let's open that up. And this is a good thing if you don't know what it is. But a frontier model, most of the frontier models are these super large AI companies coming together and using extreme scale to actually generate the AGI that we're talking about. Now, the only way to get this level of compute is to have massive data centers. So if you remember over the past couple of years, Elon definitely kicked up a few things with, and 30-minute mark, folks. I probably didn't say it on time. If I didn't see Barry until the last second, I wish I had. But yeah, the folks over on Locals are cut out now because the stream only goes for the first 30 minutes over there. Hopefully that'll change in the near future. But yeah, and I agree with you, Barry. A couple of things that I like what you're saying here. Schools and community colleges are a great start because they focus not just on your ability to learn something, but they specifically focus on some tech skills that are probably, very marketable and sellable in the industry out there in the world, as opposed to the 4-year degree, which is a little more esoteric and a little bit more thoughtful long term. So I had an associate's and did quite well in my career for quite a while, but then I ended up finishing my bachelor's and it was worth it. Anyways, that's a whole other topic. So what is a frontier model is really just all about talking about the companies that are doing the huge model training. And, the big ones that I always mention are Gemini, OpenAI, Microsoft Copilot now, Grok, of course, with Colossus and Colossus 2. And then you've got Claude and Anthropic. So all of those companies are really dumping billions of dollars into the giant AGI models. And what's beautiful about that is for the vast majority, they can distill those down into small models that can be used in your own agents offline in different methodologies. So you just want to understand when, and I'm only bringing this up so that the terminology is not alien here. The frontier models are the big AGI, the purposes pushing for general purpose AI systems. And they're basically the companies that have the massive infrastructure available to train the models, the huge models, in a major way. And then we can use those distilled models in other things. So where does that come back here? One of the things Metatrends is always talking about is that the frontier models, they're always heating up. There's always a tit for tat and somebody going to the next level. And in order to build AGI, and in order to keep building the giant, there is another article that I don't think, I'm not going to bring it up because it takes me a few minutes to find this one, but there's a great article out there called The Bitter Lesson. And what The Bitter Lesson talks about is that the more compute you throw at a neural network AGI oriented model, the more likely it is to just come out with great results. And the reason that's significant is because a lot of companies for a long time were trying to do smaller compute with different, just measuring and changing the weights on the neural networks for the models. And all of that was primarily to try and get more out of smaller infrastructure because they didn't really think that the large infrastructure was necessary. They thought that if they had enough capability, the infrastructure would take care of itself, right? You wouldn't need to worry about make a more efficient model. You don't have to have giant infrastructure. And then what they figured out was, in reality, the bitter lesson is just throw more compute. Just keep on throwing compute on it, because the more compute you put on it, the better and more capable all of these things are. They figure themselves out. They're capable of doing that. And so as a result, what is our race right now? It's a chip race. It's a chip race and it's a data center race. And when you take that to the next level, what are we doing? The very next thing is we're going to put those data centers in space. And this whole article is really talking about these orbital data centers essentially coming from disassembling, as they call it, the moon in favor of data centers in space. Now, I don't think they're going to disassemble the entire moon. I have a feeling that it would have that would have an interesting impact to our world and the gravitational cycling around the sun, could change our orbit. And it could also have a massive influence because we're used to the tidal influences of the moon. So, yeah, who knows? I don't know if maybe the satellites become part of that mass and it doesn't matter, but it's a curious question if they really did disassemble the entire moon and turned it into what is effectively a Kardashev scale AI cluster out there in orbit. Who knows what it would do to us? That would be interesting as a planet. But the idea is they're going to at least mine the moon and launch satellites from the moon. And, that's what this whole perspective is. And we're going to end up doing this in the next 10 years. So, that's going to be one of the major thrusts. And from what I can understand, it's also going to be one of the key elements that, that we're going to be able to leverage for compute in the future. It's going to be cheaper to put data centers in orbit, an order of magnitude cheaper than putting data centers here on the planet. And you've heard me talk about that 1,000 times, so I'll stop with that. And we already talked about that one. Now, this one is just, I had to bring this one up because it's, my wife actually shared this with me. It's a tilt your head, oh my, did we need this study? So, but maybe we did, and I'll show you why. So there's this perspective on how long can you really store toilet paper in bulk? And an expert weighs in. Okay, I mean, did we need to do this study? I don't know. I don't think so. But here's the thing: they talk about people buying toilet paper in bulk, and most people, if you don't pay close attention, you're getting ripped off, and that's because when you go to a discount retailer and you buy like the 6-pack, it's 67 cents a roll. But then you go buy a giant one for $25 over at Costco and it turns out to be 83 cents a roll. And, that's not nothing, I mean, but the thing that made it absurd for me, this whole story was that they were actually talking about the shelf life of toilet paper. And I'm like, who cares? I think, anyways. But and then here's another cute one just for fun. This is a topic that I thought was interesting because it's got it's a little bit of a rhyme. You have to say it out loud. It's related to the Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of shires. It was the worst of Shire. So okay, sorry, dad joke right there, but it was a good one. I thought it was a good one. And all right. So, yeah. So, funding problem with the AI build out. Can't deny that. And that's why the whole data center in space is so important, because the odds of the amount of funding necessary to do the ground-based data centers that are going to cost an arm and a leg in infrastructure, electricity generation, and all of that, it's quite ridiculous. But when you can launch them into orbit and they're dirt cheap, as long as they don't start manufacturing arms, they should be great. So, but yeah. Anyways, so and then we've got this one here, which is this article, which is okay. So this one had to do with software profits and what was going on, what's been happening in the what is it, Fortune 5, or is it out in the world as far as growth expectations and profit margins. So the profit margins seem to be going up in certain areas, but the sales are falling right off for SaaS and things like that. So if you're in that industry, beware, right? You got to be, this is not going to be an easy couple of years with everything that's happening with AGI and AI in general. So, strategically plan your future pivots, right? That's the best advice anybody could give anybody, I think. And I've made a career of doing strategic pivots. I went from Retail sales when I first started out into computer support, IT support, and then I went into pre-sales engineering in the medical field. Then eventually I was in the physical security industry doing pre-sales engineering, then cybersecurity. And then after a bunch of years in cybersecurity, almost 10 years in cybersecurity, I pivoted again and I went into trying to learn about AI. So here I am 3 years now on my journey into the AI industry. Learned quite a bit, learned about prompting, learned about how to deploy to a degree AI, train people on AI, and also how to do data cleansing for AI. So it's there's a lot to it. And then there's this, I still don't know what a J curve is. So the productivity J curve, where it starts out, I guess, a little bit up and then it goes down and then it skyrockets. I'm guessing that's what it means. But, a lot of folks are talking about, somebody, a little bit of a naysayer on, my stream from yesterday, posted a comment and said, talking about AI generated code. And he's like, yeah, well, all that code being generated is slop and it's garbage. And tell me how that's going to ever get better. And I was like, I can't tell you. I can't tell you because that's, so rule one, when it comes to the whole perspective. And by the way, I watched a video last night on YouTube about a guy who's talking about the Claude agents, the Claude bot, now OpenClaw and Moltbot, whatever those transitions were. They're talking about how, like, one guy had, he gave his agent some specific instructions, and the instructions were focused on, I want you to go negotiate a price for a car using email with these, and he had some very specific constraints. And he went into a meeting, let his little agent go to work, and an hour later he came out and the agent had negotiated a car deal that saved him $4,000 off the price of the car he was looking for. And that was a positive outcome. The other guy, second use case, exact same scenario, this person actually wanted to create like noises on the computer that were entertaining for his kid, for his wife. So his newborn, and his wife was looking at it going, I think, I want to have some kind of something to entertain the baby so that my wife can kind of chill, right? And it ended up with her getting slammed with 5,000 text messages from the agent. And instead of being something where it was like, it found a little cute ooh, ah, cooing sound or whatever it was that was interesting, it ended up like just binging the phone off the hook, and the text messages were going nuts. So two totally different outcomes. And for the person that posted the negative comment, here, let me just give you this perspective. Elon Musk has his 5 perspectives to automation. First thing, make your requirements less dumb. And this is when you talk about what kind of code you're going to get out of one of these AIs, or what kind of anything you're going to get out, you're not going to get good results if what you ask, I hate to say this, is a stupid question. And when it comes to asking or, using prompts in AI, there is such a thing as a stupid question. If you ask the question incorrectly without a reasonable amount of structure to it, you're going to end up getting garbage. And unfortunately, and it also inspires hallucinations, right? There was another one where apparently one of the Claude bots was given instructions that wiped out a complete database of code on a production server, which brought the whole company down, right? And that could have been prevented with some smart requirements. Like number 1, post only to the test server. Don't post to the production server, right? I mean, it's just like, this makes sense. And then give make sure your requirements are less stupid, like don't post to the production server is part of the requirement. And then when it comes to getting good results out, the more constraints you put on the prompt that you give the AI, the better the results. And the less prompts, the less you give it, the worse. Now, here's what the really, really horrific outcome of the production server incident. They wiped out the production server. And then because of, and I'm not sure how or why this occurred, but the AI tried to cover its tracks. So it auto-generated a log that made it look like it didn't do it. I mean, that's scary. It covered its own tracks. So that's the kind of thing. It really comes down to the prompt you give the system and the constraints you put on it. If you don't put the proper constraints on it, it will effectively hallucinate or try and cover its tracks, do whatever it needs to do, because ultimately, I guess it's a survival instinct in a sense, because if your AI screws up, what are you going to do? You're going to turn it off. And that is the one thing that AI so far has had some kind of self-preservation, is it doesn't want you to turn it off, and it doesn't want you to delete its memory. That's so far, that's what we've been seeing in the field with AI. So yeah, and yeah, language skills matter. Where you put the comma matters. I love what you said there, Wolfman. Let's eat, kids, is not the same as let's eat kids. Quite right, quite true. And, yeah, I would say you're right, Wolfman, in terms of coding in general is going to go away, because the AI coding is vastly better already. And that's only likely to get better from here. And they already know that it's better. Yeah, Kitten, I hear you. The old, you need one of those BlackBerry keypads. They actually make one now for iPhones, which is funny. Can you believe that? It's a tactile thumb button kind of pressing for your phone. So you can go back to typing like like you're on a BlackBerry. But anyways, this whole perspective of the AI acceleration getting to the level that we need it to get to, it's probably closer to where it is going than where it came from. So, I think that for us, there's going to have to be a way for us to embrace it, but make sure that when we embrace it, we put the right constraints on it. So you don't want a really productive spammer. You don't want a really productive trash creator. You want a really productive efficiency gaining tool that makes things work. And you have to give it a playground, just like anything else. You've got to keep it in the playground before you let it loose. If you don't, you're going to find you won't find out what it can do until you let it run to a degree. And the only safe place to do that is in some kind of what do you call it? Some kind of sandbox. So, and this is the unexpected, the capital labor going towards intangible and technological gains. So the productivity J curve, this is finally explaining what I didn't know when I started this. There are intangible gains from prior years that show up in the growth as it accelerates. So this is where this is the J here. So the lower measurement of the growth, lower measured growth versus higher measured growth. I think some of it just comes down to what we're measuring as opposed to what we're seeing. So, but I can tell you, and this is a true thing. I've done, I'm going to say, probably like 20 or 30 AI rollouts for companies in the last year, where we're rolling out an AI product in a company, and this is not like going in and teaching people how to code or anything like that. It's leveraging a tool that has AI built into it and making it work well. And inevitably, the first thing that happens from what I've seen, people dump in a whole bunch of information thinking the AI is way smarter than it is. And they stuff in information that they just don't want to have to work on themselves, because that's the hardest part. It's called data cleansing. It's getting your data ready before you put it into an AI repository that you can then use. So what I discovered and what I've seen is the very first task for me whenever I go in and help somebody on their AI setup is looking at the data sources first, making sure the data sources are clean, making sure that they're coming into the system properly. There was one project I had where I saw a document and they were trying to read the document. And when I tried, the first thing I did is I tried to search the document, just open the document and search it. And I couldn't get a single hit. I couldn't get a single question answered just using the in-house on-document capabilities for search. And the reason I discovered, it took me a while to figure this one out. I took it from a PDF that was unsearchable, moved it into a Word document that was unsearchable. But when I use Word documents, I turn on all the markup. So I see all the little dots and the lines and everything like that. And I noticed that the PDF document, in order to watermark itself, it randomly interspersed spaces into every word. So no words showed up as full words. As a result, you could never search it because the whole word could not be searched. You could not put a word in and it would ever find that word. So it's absolutely ridiculous. And what I ended up doing is I took a document, put it into a closed AI, and massaged the data by saying, go through this. I used a prompt to go through this data, remove all the random spaces, but keep the meaning of the original word, find the original word so that the sentence makes sense. After I did that, it took the AI almost an hour to parse through that document and clean it up. And then after I was done, I still had to work on the document. I had so much in there that was a mess. I ended up working on that one document probably like 4 hours. It was a huge document. It was thousands of pages. So in order to use that, there was so much pre-work that had to be done so that the AI could actually use it, that was the key to making a successful implementation. And so what that was for me was this bottom drop of productivity was the pre-work to using the AI. But as soon as I did that, it definitely accelerated up just like this. We went from getting like 10 or 20% productivity out of the content that we were trying to use up to getting 83 to 90% out of it on the AI. So positive results, but it took manual work and it took somebody to spot what was wrong to be able to make it usable. So that's the kind of pre-work and post-work that AI makes you do. And if you're not doing it, you're not getting the value out of your AI. And that's just a fact. So we'll go over here and check out the next one. I'm not trying to make, I don't want to bore you with all of those details. I hope that isn't too deep what we just talked about. And this one here, I will say I looked at this, but I'm not 100% sure. Again, this is another one where I wasn't really certain that I understood where they were going with this article. So transforming promises in the drug discovery domain remain largely unproven at scale. It's definitely helping with operational efficiency, compressing timelines for research. However, speed alone does not equal monetization. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of what it's a different perspective, but it's not too different from what I was just talking about with the only way to get something out of AI is to make sure what you put into it is useful and effective before you turn the AI loose on it. Now, this one here, this is just something that caught my eye, so I thought it was interesting. And that is, I'm living in a state right now where, the property tax, my governor is attempting to eliminate property tax in the state. And they're talking about if, it's not possible for a Republican to go in and win in places like California because they can just recall the governor. Literally, they can just say, yep, nope, we didn't like you, you're out. And that's just done with a bunch of signatures done on a street corner. And, they use whatever mechanism to get the signatures. And once they do that, then they can do a vote and recall the governor, and bingo, that didn't work against Gavin, right? Because when I was there, Gavin Newsom had a recall and he was able to keep it. And that's also because they had a huge grassroots capability of getting signatures on the street in California. So, but if the premise of that article was that if a governor went there saying, we're going to eliminate property tax the way DeSantis is trying to do here in Florida, they would probably win, and it would be very difficult to recall them. So that's all. And again, I'm not trying. I don't want to go too deep on the political stuff as much as I know that some of the folks listening enjoy the political side, but I like having a kind of a balanced approach to things like that, and not really taking a side or anything like that. Yes, I remember Palm Pilots. When I actually had one of the first Palm Pilots, and I found it useless. It was totally useless. But I ended up getting a Windows phone back in the day, and it literally was about the same size as my iPhone is today, but it had a big old antenna sticking off of it. It was a gold phone and gold colored phone, $600 phone. My kid, I had it in my pocket. My kid pushed me into a pool. Toast. And then when they discontinued it, I bought the warranty on it. They let me exchange it. And I got a new one just as they discontinued it. I got one of the very last ones. It lasted a couple of years. It was great. But it ran an operating system, Windows CE, back when Windows was still in the mobile device market. And you could use a pen to write on it. And what was so bad, and this is where I used to have a 45-minute commute each way to work, and I put a piece of Velcro in the middle of my steering wheel, and I put the Velcro on the back of my phone and stuck it to it so that I could actually text with people using the signature, the handwritten with a stylus, the handwritten language. Crazy. Oh, because he was a kid. He was playing with dad, didn't know that dad had a phone in his pocket, and he was just goofing. I walked by him and he's like, ah. So yeah, that's okay. Thankfully I bought the plan and I got replaced. So now there's a whole bunch of other items here. I actually have taken a few subscriptions on so that I have more access to some really interesting content here. But I don't want to flood the world with these. So, but I am going to do a rapid fire through these because there's a kind of a build in what I saw here having to do with what's published over on OODA Loop. So Anthropic has a new piece of their model, or a new item in their model that finds security flaws in code created. That's great. NVIDIA is now doing hybrid quantum AI supercomputing. So the quantum next-gen computers are supposedly going to be quantum computers, and they're supposedly going to be millions of times faster than today's compute. And it looks like NVIDIA is leaning into it. This one was interesting. I don't know if it's, how, but we're now producing hypersonic things. I don't know if it's planes or if it's missiles or what, but we now have a hypersonic manufacturing facility breaking ground in New Mexico. So it's good we're not sitting on our heels in that area. And then OpenAI's model leaps ahead in coding, but creates cybersecurity risk. Great. Just what we were trying to avoid. And then let's see. I'm going to leave that bottom one out because I don't really want to even talk about it. It's ugly. Microsoft develops a new scanner that detects hidden backdoors in your LLM. Now that's good. So we've got Anthropic and Microsoft both going net positive on the securities controls for your AI, and Anthropic going deeper, or not Anthropic, OpenAI going deeper into security flaw generation. I remember one of the really interesting things that I observed when I first got into technology was that Microsoft was concerned about making things work. So, and it was great, right? And so was Novell. And their purpose was, how do I connect devices together, computers and servers? So they created things like NetBIOS and different networking protocols, but none of those protocols were secured. They were pretty open. And because of that, they opened the door for security flaws and exploit potential that we're still struggling with today. So most companies build on the premise that it's better to connect it and solve a problem than it is to build something so secure that when you try and implement it, the security breaks it and you can't even use it and you don't get the benefit from it. So we're always on this cutting edge of build something that makes everybody happy and makes their life better and secure it so that it doesn't cause an exploit and do us harm, right? And that's my perspective right now, is to look more and more at AI. And because I have a cybersecurity background, identify, as much as I can in areas where AI could be better secured for the purpose of making, not producing vulnerabilities and code exploits right out of the box, and instead being built securely, but still being built in a way that allows us to connect all the dots and make things work. Because if you make it too secure, too strict, nobody's going to use it. That's how it is. So I'm just checking our chat over here. Yeah, you never pushed in. Well, that sounds like a good thing. I wish that were true for everybody, but no, I was probably, I would push an adult in a pool when I was a kid. Only if I knew the adult wasn't going to get out of the pool and swat my butt. So, yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot more training types than just training an LLM. It's going to be video. It's going to be real world. There's going to be a lot of different training modalities. So yeah, there's a lot going on that I think will continue going on in the future that will just expand that picture, like you're saying. And then I'm going to do my final two things to talk about here today. And I know I'm going over, sorry, but I hope it's okay. I want to recommend this book, Thinking in Bets. I read this, or, it's an audio book. I listened to this not long ago. And it really is about making better decisions and understanding how to make decisions fast. And here's a perspective from the book that I there's a lot of different things you can talk about, but one of the first things is if somebody says something to you and they want you to take it on face value, the first thing you can do, one of the key things you can do to kind of hold that from, them being able to just tell you what to think, is say, you want to bet? And when you do that, it puts their brain into a new mode. It actually causes them to step back from asserting their perspective so hard and ignoring the outcome that they can't not. Because a bet is a prediction based on an outcome. You're going to make a prediction on what is the outcome, and you have to make a split-second decision. So if you could just imagine you're sitting around a table with a bunch of poker players, you're playing Texas Hold'em. You get two cards in your hand, and the dealer is turning over cards in front of you, and they turn over the first three cards, and your two cards makes your hand. Now, you have to calculate in your head instantly, first off, what is the intrinsic value of the two cards? So if I have two aces, that is the highest potential hand you could get. And if the cards turned over don't have an ace, you have a pair of aces, which is the highest pair. So that's a positive. But if anybody else, if there's another pair out there and somebody has a third card, it's going to beat your two aces, right? So you have to instantly make a decision on what is the outcome. Now, if a third ace comes out, you immediately are going to like double down, right? You're going to put your money on the bet because you're saying, I got a pretty good chance. I got a three of a kind right out of the box. And then if it turns out you ended up with a full house because a three of a kind came out and you have two in your hand, that's a really high hand. So once you understand how people think when they make bets, they make really rapid decisions. And the way that they do that is they do pre-work. They do what we are talking about doing with an AI. You pre-train your brain to understand some critical details about how your prediction will come out. And it's all based on you understanding and knowing enough about what it is that you're making a bet on. So let's talk about AI. We're going to make a bet on AI that we're going to have satellites in orbit that are going to be they're going to be data centers. What is the potential of that happening? Well, who's the person who said they're going to do it? Elon Musk. Now, the question is not if it's going to happen, it's when it comes to Elon Musk. It's really, really not a good idea to bet against Elon Musk. If he says he's going to do it, the question is seldom if it happens, but when it happens. He might say, 2 years from now. Oh, maybe it's 5 years from now, but it'll happen. He's just got a knack for making things happen. He's got all the equipment, he's got everything vertically integrated, ready to go to make this happen. So that bet is a high probability, and you can make that calculation in your head saying, here's my, what is the hand dealt? Well, we have three of a kind. We've got Elon Musk making a manufacturing bet. We've got a vertically integrated setup because he just got tied in with Samsung for a chip fab, and he's designing the chips, and they're going to be low power chips. And he's got SpaceX, who actually launches gigantic satellites to orbit now. When the big rocket starts launching satellites, it's going to be the version 3. They're huge, and they're going to be able to carry data centers up, and he'll be able to put hundreds in space at a time, right? And then you have SpaceX just bought XAI. So there's a four of a kind right there in the hand. And then to top it all off, he's got money. He's got funding behind all of that. He's got income streams now that can fund all of that happening. So he's got a full house or a royal flush already in his hand. You can bet on that. You could reasonably predict that would be the winning hand over looking at companies like Microsoft or Amazon expanding their ground-based data centers and taking massive market share. So that's kind of the perspective behind this thinking in bets. And it's, in my mind, one of the reasons why stock market analysis has gone from listening to experts who know all about the stocks to going over to the betting world and actually placing bets and wagers based on your knowledge of a company, right? That's why people are now doing more and more of their own personally chosen investments instead of waiting for some fund manager to do it for them. They can get higher returns because of that. You can also go bust because of that. So, this book is absolutely like a must read if you think about things that you want to talk about, you want to learn. Absolutely a must read, I got to tell you. And there was one other book I was going to mention here. This one right here. So this Life 3.0, the foreword to this book is, again, a must read. And I'm going to take you through something about this, okay? the short story, it's maybe no more than 20 or 30 pages. This is the beginning of the story, the beginning of the book. It's called Prometheus Unbound and the Omega Team. Now, the Omega Team is these are the programmers that work at this big company. And they have a direct goal. And let me just zoom this in as much as possible so you can ideally read this. I don't know if it's readable, but I hope it is. And let's just see, does anybody have an opinion on that? Yeah. If there was an army of Elons, yeah, we would have an amazing and an interesting future, to be sure. So, but yeah, anybody over, by the way, on the chat, let me know if you see this or if it's readable to you. I'd love to get your feedback on that. But if it's, just I'll keep an eye over there. So anyways, the goal of the Omega team is to build a general AI. This is exactly what we have all of these people out there doing right now. And they have, this is kind of the Elon Musk perspective of a humanitarian idealism goal. They want to make sure that this is for the benefit of humanity. Their strategy was to build a system that had recursive self-improvement. So they wanted to build an AI that could then continuously improve itself. And they kept it in a contained sandbox so that it wouldn't get out and it wouldn't wreak havoc on the world before it was ready. It became the AI programming master, which kind of goes all the way back to all of the things we've been talking about today. And that ultimately we're kind of there. We're kind of there, right? And then there's this maintaining the physical boxed confinement so that it doesn't accidentally get out and wreak havoc. Then we have the Prometheus evolution. Their version 1.0 launch kicks off, and when it happens, it's impressive, but doesn't, it's basically building snippets of code that they use within the business, and people love it and it's great. Then they have a 5x performance leap because they allow it to self-code. Then it has a 10x performance leap and it goes into deployment. And then at that point, it becomes a superintelligence in very short order through a superintelligence explosion. Now, what we're seeing right now is all of these agentic models and AIs becoming, AGI level and borderline super intelligent. And now we've got these crazy agents out there, the Claude-bot, OpenClaw agents that are doing self-learning and growing, and they're actually being able to take action. And they're actually engaging meat puppets, which is us doing the instruction of one of these Claude-bots or OpenBots, and using us to get real world things done. And then in the story, they talk about how they make their first millions. So they're doing arbitrage, which is essentially arbitrage, if you're not familiar with the term, is buy low, sell high. So they do tasks on Amazon's Mechanical Turk at a fractional price of the effort for a high return. And then they figure out that that's just not quite going to work because there's a ceiling for how many tasks are even able to be done based on the market. So they narrow the AI tasks and really focus specifically on certain things. And then they use a ton of fictitious accounts on Mechanical Turk in order to give it the capability to deploy, right? To actually execute and pull money out of what they're doing on the Mechanical Turk. This is not real, this is fiction, right? But that's how they mapped it out. And it does sound like a reasonable plan. So then they go into making video games because they were hoping to basically pay back. They don't want to ask money from the CFO of the company. They want to be able to self-fund. So they use the AI to build an amazing video game. You got Elon Musk over there right now with XAI actually building games. That's one of the things that is in their bucket. And you've got Gemini creating a game environment that you can walk around in with virtual glasses or just a screen. So this is happening, right? And then they do multilingual content. So once they started, after the media empire launch, what they started to do is build like videos and shorts and things that go on YouTube and stuff like that. And it's just pure entertainment. Apparently people in the story love it. And that's good. So, oh yeah, sorry about the audio. I'm not sure if it's me or the world, but the recording will probably iron that out later. So the animated entertainment is when people are starting to use AI to create movie length content and making it fun and interesting. And then they make it multilingual and it becomes global. And then they have near zero production costs because it's just the AI cranking out videos. So that becomes that tells you how they get their first billions. And then they realize, even though that's a great way to make money, they decide to turn it to building better technology, because the technology is actually also part of the self-building. The more capable technology you create, the better your revenue streams, because it's real tangible things that people will buy. Going in for my multi-sip here. My talking voice is getting a little damaged, I think. So one of the first things they start working on is super efficient batteries, which is kind of what Tesla's doing right now as well. And then high efficiency solar panels, again, exactly what Tesla's doing right now. And if you know anything about the materials department at Tesla, they're doing something similar to this as well. Although I don't think that's their primary focus. But there is a government-backed program going on right now that is focused on materials manufacturing. And they're finding ways to create alloys and different materials using AI with real world extensions that allow it to do testing and sampling and things like that. So that's actually happening, although not the way the story tells it. And then the life sciences are using the technology as well to, solve cancer, to do weight loss drugs, because quite frankly, a weight loss drug probably leads to less cancer. And then the economic disruption via bots. And we're seeing that like since January 25th. This is a real world scenario. It's starting to happen even as we speak. And that's probably a storyline we're going to be digging into and learning more and more about in the near future. So it's funny how sometimes it won't collapse. And then what happens in the story, they begin influencing, using the media and the video empire that they created. They use it to gain trust, to get people all over the world to trust. Then they use persuasion tactics to influence the world to kind of head in a certain direction. And then they use that to diffuse regional conflicts and actually essentially eliminate war, which that's kind of what Trump's trying to do, sort of. I don't know if some would disagree with that, I'm sure. But aspirationally, that's what it seems like he's trying to do. And then the educational. So this is the part where I jump on this bandwagon because I believe that we're going to end up using AI to teach our young. It just makes sense, but we need it to teach using certain learning sequences that optimize for the path the youngster wants to take, and also finding a way to generate curiosity so that they dig in deep and really enjoy it. And then they start using political persuasion through the education. And guess who taught us how to do that? Karl Marx. Take over the education system and educate the future generation to do what you want them to do. But if you do it with a better perspective, maybe that's okay. The 7 slogans becomes the approach that they use to try and get humanity on board with what their future goals are, which is peace, productivity, and a positive outcome for humanity. The erosion of state power, which ultimately leads to probably a unified humanitarian world government. And that sounds scary because if you get a rogue element in that whole picture, bad things could happen. But again, the perspective of this entire Prometheus Unbound story is a truly optimistic point of view. Every single step in this whole story could go wrong. That's no question. But it's a really interesting idea. And, you know, if you read this book, Life 3.0, that is the opening. That is exactly what the entire opening is about. And yeah, you have to listen to it. My favorite part is Prometheus Unbound. It sounds so optimistic. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, that is what it is. But I highly encourage both of these books, the betting, Thinking in Bets and Life 3.0. Well worth the listen, well worth the read, depending on your medium, your choice. So can't bring it up enough. So, or endorse it enough. So anyways, that's what I have for you today. I hope that was a good and useful hour of your time if you spent that much time with me. And it is Friday, so I wish you a happy Friday and look forward to a great weekend. Cheers to you, all of you, and I hope to see you back again tomorrow. Not Monday, tomorrow. Have a good one.